Everything you're about to watch, every animation, every diagram, every number that counts up on this video was built by Claude itself using two of the skills I'm about to show you. Nobody touched After Effects. I want that to sink in because it's the whole point. Most people right now are getting maybe a third of what Claude Code can actually do. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they've never installed a single skill. So they re-explain the same thing every session and they get a generic agent back. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what skills are, how they actually work under the hood, how to install one in about 30 seconds, and then the 5 I use every single day, 2 of which I built myself. By the end, you'll have all 5 running, plus a template to build your own. Let's get into it. So what actually is a skill? Forget the technical definition for a second. A skill is just a folder with one instruction file inside it. And that file is written in plain English, no code. It tells Claude how to do one specific job, start to finish. The closest thing I can compare it to is an SOP, a standard operating procedure, the kind of playbook you'd hand a new hire on their first day. When this comes up, here's exactly how we do it here. You write that playbook once, and from then on, every single time that job comes up, Claude opens the file, reads your process, and does it your way, not the generic way, your way. Let me make that concrete. I have a skill that knows my exact thumbnail style, the colors, the layout, the font, where my face goes, all of it. So when I say make a thumbnail, I don't describe any of that. I don't paste a brief. It already knows because I wrote it down once as a skill. That's the difference. A normal prompt is something you type again and again and again. A skill is something you teach Claude one time and it remembers forever. And here's what a skill is not, because this trips people up. It's not a setting. It's not a subscription. It's not some advanced developer feature you need permission to use. It is a text file with instructions. If you can write down how you do something, you can make a skill. That's genuinely the bar. Now here's the part almost nobody explains. And it's the reason skills are so clever. You might be thinking, okay, if I install 100 skills, won't that overload Claude and slow everything to a crawl? It doesn't. And the reason is something called progressive disclosure. When you start a session, Claude does not read every skill you've got installed. That would bury it. Instead, it only reads the name and a one-line description of each one. That's it. A tiny label, one sentence. It keeps that little list in the back of its mind. Then the moment your request matches one of those descriptions, it opens that specific skill, reads the full instructions, and ignores all the others completely. So you can have 100 skills installed, and your agent stays just as fast and focused as if it had one, because it's only ever loading the one it actually needs right now. That's the whole trick, and it has one big implication for you. The description is the trigger. It's how Claude decides when to reach for a skill. A vague description like helps with content, Claude never knows when to use it, so it just sits there dead. A sharp one, use this when Andy asks to make a YouTube thumbnail. Fires at exactly the right moment every time. So when you write a skill, half the work is the steps, and the other half is that single description line. Get that line right, and the skill basically uses itself. Before we install anything, let me clear up the one thing that confuses absolutely everyone. Because if you've spent any time around Claude Code, you've heard 3 words thrown around like they're interchangeable: skills, MCPs, and subagents. They are not the same thing, and once you see the difference, this whole world clicks into place. A skill is knowledge. It's how to do something written in plain English. The playbook. That's what we've been talking about. An MCP, that stands for Model Context Protocol, is a connection. It's how Claude plugs into the outside world, your database, your Gmail, your Slack, your calendar, a live web browser. On its own, Claude can only think and write. An MCP gives it hands, the ability to reach into other systems and actually do things in them. And a subagent is a worker. It's a separate copy of Claude that you hand one focused job to so it can go off and work on its own, often several of them in parallel, without cluttering up your main conversation. When I've got a big task, I'll spin up subagents to each take a piece. So put it together simply. A skill is the playbook, an MCP is the hands, a subagent is the extra worker. The best setups eventually use all three: a skill that knows your process, MCPs that let it touch your tools, and subagents that let it scale. But if you're starting today, you start with skills: highest return, least effort, no code, and it's the layer that teaches Claude to work like you. Everything else is plumbing. Skills are the brain. That's why this whole video is about skills first. Okay, so how do you actually get one onto your machine? Skills usually ship inside plugins, and plugins live in marketplaces. Think of a marketplace as an app store for Claude, except it's free, and a marketplace is really just a GitHub repository that somebody published. Installing is genuinely about 30 seconds. Inside Claude Code, you run the plugin command, you point it at a marketplace, and you pick the skill you want. Hit install. That's it. No setup wizard, no config files to edit, no terminal gymnastics. There's one detail that matters though, and most people get it wrong. Install at the user level, not just the project level. If you install a skill into one project folder, it only works there. Install it at the user level, and that skill is available in every single project you ever open from now on. One install everywhere. You do it once and forget about it. Where do you find good ones? There's the official set that Anthropic publishes, and then there's a growing world of community marketplaces. People sharing the skills they built for their own work. That's actually how I found a couple of the ones I'm about to show you. And don't worry about writing any of this down. I'm dropping the exact commands and the links to every marketplace in this video down in the description, so you can just copy, paste, and go. All right, the 5 I actually use. Skill number 1 is called Superpowers, and it's the single most impactful thing I've installed all year. Here's the problem it fixes. By default, when you ask Claude Code to do something, it just starts doing it. You type a prompt, and it immediately starts writing code or making changes. No planning, no clarifying questions, no checking its own work afterward, which feels fast until you realize halfway through that it misunderstood what you actually wanted. And now you're burning time and tokens fixing something that should have been right the first time. Superpowers is a free plugin that installs a whole set of skills that force Claude through a proper process on everything it builds. Clarify, design, plan, code, verify. Before it writes a single line, it stops and asks the right questions. It maps out a plan with the exact files it's going to touch. And at the very end, it actually verifies that what it built works, instead of just telling you it's done and moving on. I ran a real test on this. 12 sessions, half with superpowers turned on, half without, same prompts, same model. The superpowers runs came out 9% cheaper, used 14% fewer tokens, and the output was just flat out better on anything that wasn't trivially simple. But the part people sleep on is the visual side. When I ask it to design something, Superpowers spins up a little local dashboard and shows me options and mockups before it commits to anything. So I'm choosing from real options on screen, not imagining what it might build and hoping. It's the first thing I install on any new machine, full stop. Skill number 2 is Hyperframes, and this one might be the most surprising on the entire list because you are looking at it right now. Hyperframes is an open source framework from the team behind HeyGen, and it lets Claude build motion graphics videos, like every animation on this video, by writing them as plain HTML and animation code and then rendering that straight out to an MP4. Now, normally, motion graphics means After Effects, keyframes, a brutal learning curve, and hours of fiddling. With the Hyperframe skill, you just describe the scene you want, a gold number that counts up to 30 on a dark grid, and Claude writes the composition and renders it for you. And here's how I actually use it day to day, because that's where it gets powerful. I keep the scenes it's already built. So next time I don't start from scratch. I say, like that 30% counter, but make it count to 9, and it adapts the existing code in seconds. The library compounds. Every video I make makes the next one faster. I want to be completely transparent with you about something. Every animation in this video, the counting numbers, the diagrams, the way these scenes slide and transition, none of it was hand animated. It was all built by Claude, using this exact skill from a script. The video about skills was made by a skill. That was the moment it really hit me how far this whole thing goes. And it sets up the next one perfectly, because skill number 3 is one I built myself, and it's called CG Long, my long form content factory. This is what happens when you stop installing other people's skills and start teaching Claude an entire workflow that's unique to you. CG Long takes that Hyperframes engine and wraps a whole pipeline around it. I handed a script, literally just the words I want said. It generates one voiceover in my voice. Then it reads the script and decides, beat by beat, what should be on screen at each moment. A diagram here, a stat that counts up there, a quick talking head moment there. It renders every one of those pieces, and then it assembles them all into one finished long-form video, perfectly timed to the voiceover. This video, the exact one you're watching right now, came out of that pipeline. I wrote a script, and the factory built everything else around it. And the honest result of that, I went from a full day of editing per video down to about 20 minutes of approving. I'm not an editor anymore, I'm a reviewer. I read what it made, I tweaked a couple of things I don't love, and it ships. That's the real payoff of skills, and I need you to see it. Once you've taught Claude a process this specific to how you work, you're not doing the work anymore, you're directing it. And in the last step, I'm going to show you how to start building skills like this one yourself. Skill number 4 is another one I built, and it's called Graphify. Here's the problem it solves, and I guarantee you have this problem too. You've got a folder full of stuff, documents, notes, an entire code base, research papers, months of decisions, and somewhere in there is the answer to your question. But finding it means opening file after file after file, hoping you remember the right keyword. Graphify takes any pile of input, text, code, PDFs, even video transcripts, and turns it into a knowledge graph, a connected web of all the concepts and how they relate. And then you just ask it. The moment that sold me on it, I pointed Graphify at about 8 months of my own business notes, and I asked it why I'd made a particular pricing decision back in the spring. It answered in one sentence, and it linked me to the exact day I made the call. No scrolling, no searching, no trying to remember. I asked a question, and it pulled the answer straight off the map. That's the magic. It turns a dead archive, the kind of folder you never open because it's overwhelming, into something you can actually have a conversation with. Your notes start answering back, and notice the pattern again, because it's the same every time. This started as a problem I personally had, and it became a skill. Hold on to that, because it's the whole point of the last step. Skill number 5 is deep research, and it fixes the exact thing that stops most people from trusting AI for anything that actually matters: the confident guess. Ask a normal chatbot a hard question, and it'll hand you a smooth, well-written answer that sounds completely right, with no real idea whether it actually is. It's guessing with confidence. The deep research skill works in a fundamentally different way. From your one question, it fans out into a whole set of searches across the web. It pulls the real sources, and then, this is the part that matters, it tries to disprove its own findings before it trusts them. Claims that don't hold up under scrutiny get thrown out. Only what survives gets written into a final report, with the actual links so you can check the receipts yourself. It's the difference between asking one tired intern for an answer and running a small research team that argues with each other before they report back to you. I used it last week to vet a tool before I committed a whole week of work to it, and it came back with the real gotchas, the ones buried deep in forum threads and changelogs that I would never have found on my own. Saved me days. So when I need to actually know something, not vibe it, know it, this is what I reach for. And notice the theme one more time. It's a process packaged into a skill that you trigger with one plain request. So that's the 5. But here's the thing I really want you to walk away with, because it's bigger than any single skill on that list. Once you can build your own, every repetitive thing you do becomes one. And building one is almost embarrassingly simple. A skill under the hood is just a file. It's called skill.md. At the very top, it has 2 things, a name and a one-line description. And remember, that description is the trigger Claude uses to know when to reach for it. And then below that, It's just your instructions in plain English. The steps you'd give a smart assistant who's doing this for the first time, that's the entire thing. No code anywhere. Let me make it dead concrete. Say every Friday you write a recap of your week, and you've now explained the format to Claude 3 separate times. Stop doing that. Instead, just say, take the way we just did this and turn it into a skill called weekly recap. Claude writes the skill.md for you. Name, weekly recap. Description, use this when I ask for my Friday recap, and your steps underneath. Done. Next Friday, you just say, do my recap, and it's already trained. You never explain it again. That's the loop. And here's why it's so powerful. The second time you catch yourself explaining the same process to Claude, that's your signal. Stop and ask it to write that up as a skill instead. Now it's permanent. You've trained the specialist once forever. Do that a few times and the skills start to compound. They stack on top of each other, exactly like CG long stacks on top of hyperframes. So that's the real shift I want to leave you with. You stop treating Claude like a chatbot you have to prompt, and you start treating it like a teammate you train. Every repetitive thing becomes a skill, and your agent gets sharper every single week. To get you started, I put together a free Claude Code Skills starter pack. It's got the direct links to all 5 skills from this video, plus a fill-in-the-blank skill.md template with the name, the description, and the steps already laid out, so you can build your very first skill in the next 10 minutes. It's free in my school community, and the link's in the description. That pack is the whole thing, not a teaser. If you want me actually in the loop helping you build, that's what the community's there for. Now go install one. I'll see you in the next one.